Okay, picture this. A medicine so powerful it was used by kings and presidents, something doctors gave you for literally everything from a simple toothache to the plague. Now, imagine that for 500 years, this miracle cure was actually one of the most brutal poisons we've ever known. This is the incredible story of mercury, and it's a story from a time when the line between healing and killing was terrifyingly, dangerously thin. It's a wild question, right? How on earth could a toxic heavy metal become the world's go-to treatment for pretty much any problem you could have? To get to the bottom of it, we have to unpack a 500-year-old medical mystery and really trace the rise and fall of a poisoner's promise. So our story doesn't start in some lab. It starts in a 16th century Russian palace with a death that absolutely haunted an empire. When Zeritza Anastasia died after a long, drawn-out illness, her husband, the infamous Ivan the Terrible, was just consumed by paranoia. He insisted she'd been murdered. For centuries, everyone just chalked it up to the ravings of a madman. But then, in the year 2000, scientists exhumed her body. And what they found in her hair? Just staggering levels of mercury. We're talking 10 times the normal amount. So the big question is, was it poison from an assassin's hand, or was it medicine from a doctor's? Back then, believe it or not, the answer wasn't at all clear. To really understand how medicine and murder could get so mixed up, we have to meet the guy who basically made it all possible. We need to jump back to that same exact time period and meet the man who was, in many ways, the architect of the entire Mercury age. This is Theophrastus von Hohenheim, though he called himself Paracelsus. He was so, well, bombastic that we literally get the word from his name. This guy was a Swiss physician who despised the old ways so much that he held a public ceremony to burn the ancient medical texts. He came forward with this radical, really dangerous, and ultimately world-changing idea, all wrapped up in a single sentence: the dose alone makes the poison. So Paracelsus just threw out the old Greek ideas about the body's humors. Instead, he came up with something called iatrochemistry. His big idea was that the body isn't a collection of fluids, it's a chemical factory. So illness, that's just a chemical imbalance. And if that's true, you can fight it with, well, other chemicals. His logic was that since poisons can create symptoms that look like a disease, maybe a tiny controlled dose of that exact same poison could be the cure. He gave mercury its intellectual defense, and he transformed it from a toxin into a tool. And with that, Paracelsus's ideas just took off, and they kicked off a whole new era in medicine. It was called heroic medicine. The core idea here was that disease was this powerful force, and the only way to save a patient was to launch an equally powerful, violent assault on the body itself to drive the illness out. The symptoms weren't seen as the body fighting back, they were signs the disease was winning. And the weapon of choice in this war, without a doubt, was calomel. That's a mercury compound. It became a true cure-all, the Samson of the materia medica, prescribed for a just baffling list of problems. I mean, Abraham Lincoln took it for his depression. Napoleon and Andrew Jackson were given it. The list of famous patients just goes on because for a very long time, calomel was seen as the answer to, well, everything. And the ways they got this stuff into people, they were brutal. It just shows how determined they were. We're not talking about gentle remedies here. Patients could be slathered in a mercury paste and then basically baked by a fire, or they could be sealed inside a tent and forced to breathe in vaporized mercury. But the most common way was just to swallow it, often in pills like the famous blue mass, a pretty grim mix of mercury, licorice, and rosewater. And the doses, they were just staggering. Dr. Benjamin Rush, one of America's most famous doctors, a founding father even, he pushed for what he called the heroic dose. 20 grains of calomel multiple times a day. Now, to put that in perspective for you, today, health agencies say we should consume a tiny, tiny fraction of a single milligram of mercury per day. Rush was prescribing thousands of milligrams. Now, the body's reaction to this was, as you'd expect, violent. We're talking extreme cramping, vomiting, and most famously, just buckets of saliva and bloody diarrhea. But here's the twisted logic. Doctors didn't see this as a sign of poisoning. They saw it as proof the cure was working. The body was purging the disease. It created this horrible feedback loop. The sicker the medicine made you, the more convinced the doctor was that it was a success. But some people were starting to have their doubts, like this anonymous poet writing in 1825. Because the horrifying truth was that for countless patients, this heroic cure was so much worse than whatever disease they started with. The price of this cure was paid in shattered bodies and broken minds. The reality of what was happening to these people, mercury poisoning, was just devastating. Patients developed gangrene of the mouth, where their gums and cheeks would literally rot, causing their teeth to fall out, leaving them permanently disfigured. And the neurological damage? It caused a condition called mercurial erethism, deep depression, crippling shyness and anxiety, plus uncontrollable tremors, memory loss. The cure was a living nightmare. But people were starting to notice. During the American Civil War, one man saw the absolute carnage and decided to do something about it. His name was Surgeon General William Hammond. Seeing the horrific effects calomel was having on soldiers, he issued an order, Circular Number 6, and banned the stuff from the Army's medical supplies. He called it what it was, a dangerous poison. But the medical establishment just revolted. They saw Hammond's ban as a personal attack on their expertise. And his powerful enemy, the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, saw his chance. Hammond was shipped off, court-martialed on totally made-up charges, and dismissed from his post. And the second he was gone, Calomel went right back on the supply list. It was a chilling example of medical dogma and politics beating out actual scientific evidence, with absolutely tragic results for the soldiers. So in the end, the reign of mercury didn't stop because doctors finally held up their hands and said, "Oops, we were wrong." No, it ended because the entire foundation of their medicine completely crumbled. Science was about to show them a brand new enemy, and with it, a new kind of weapon. This was the game changer. Heroic medicine saw illness as this internal imbalance, and its weapon was the mercury sledgehammer, just a brute force, non-specific attack on the whole body. But then, thanks to guys like Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, we got germ theory. And suddenly, the enemy wasn't some vague imbalance. It was a specific, microscopic invader. And you can't fight a tiny invader with a sledgehammer. You need a magic bullet.
And that magic bullet finally arrived in 1910. A scientist named Paul Ehrlich, after testing over 600 different compounds, discovered Salvarsen. It was an arsenic-based drug, but it was designed specifically to hunt down and kill the bacteria that causes syphilis, while doing a lot less damage to the patient. It was targeted, it was effective, and almost overnight, it made the brutal, clumsy violence of mercury look totally archaic. The king was dead.
So calomel is long gone from our pharmacies, but its ghost, it kinda lingers. This 500-year history isn't just a weird historical fact. It's a really profound lesson that still echoes into our modern world of medicine. You can actually see its legacy in the words we use every day. You've probably heard the phrase mad as a hatter, right? Well, that's not just a line from Alice in Wonderland. It comes directly from the 19th century hat makers who used mercury vapor to treat felt. From all that exposure, they developed the exact same neurological condition, erethism, that medical patients did, with the tremors and shyness that was just tragically dismissed as madness. And that really is the story's most chilling lesson. The doctors prescribing mercury weren't evil. They truly believed they were helping, using the most powerful tools their science had to offer. Their story is a timeless case study in confirmation bias, of seeing a violent reaction and deciding it must be a cure. It proves that in medicine, good intentions aren't enough, and that the line between a healer and a poisoner isn't drawn by intention, it's drawn by knowledge. And that kind of forces us to look in the mirror, doesn't it? To look at our own modern medical marvels, our cutting-edge treatments, and ask a really humbling question. What are we so absolutely certain about today that future generations are going to look back on in total horror? It's a question worth remembering, because the ghost of the mercury cure is a reminder that sometimes certainty can be the most dangerous poison of all.